Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? Welcome to our spoiler review of The Batman. We all finally got a chance to see this movie, and we are going to talk about it with spoilers attached. So if you have not seen the movie, be sure to stay away from this video. This video is all about the spoilers. I'm excited because I haven't even talked about this movie at all with you guys. So being able to talk about it for the first time with you guys is incredibly exciting. I kind of want to get a general thoughts first because that's what we always do. We want to have a general thoughts. So let's start with you, RB3. Your thoughts on The Batman?
Well, it was dark. It's a dark film, very dark. I mean, both textually and the subject matter, but also in its literal look and cinematography. I remember the cinematographer Greg Fraser at one point said during the production, like, oh, this movie doesn't need to, we're imagining Batman that doesn't need to be like unnecessarily dark. I don't know, like, if they're living true to a promise of being unnecessary or being dark, but either way, it was really, it definitely felt on the darker end. It's probably the darkest Batman movie, and honestly, it's one of the better ones. I don't know, the Nolan trilogy set a high bar for what we could see in the Batman character and the realistic standard, but this definitely reached close to those heights. I don't know if it exactly got to those heights, but it's definitely one of the best Batman portrayals I think we've seen in recent times.
How about you, Sabrina? Your general thoughts?
I liked it a lot, and I really like the Batman character as a whole, and I feel like this is probably one of my favorite entries that we've gotten, and I do put this above like the Keaton, Ben Affleck, even like the Nolan trilogy. This is just something that's like a breath of fresh air to me, 100%. Like, I liked the Nolan trilogy a lot. I didn't love Christian Bale's Batman. I've talked about this quite a bit. So I never felt like I had a Batman that I connected with. A lot of people talk about Michael Keaton as theirs because that's the one they grew up with. To me, I think this is such an interesting first entry into what we might possibly see with like a next film. So yeah, echoing RB3's thoughts, cinematography I thought was incredible, but yeah, extremely dark. And also the subject matter, God dang, like they just really went full force into this one. And that's something that I really appreciated. So I enjoyed this a lot as my first overall thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting talking about this movie in retrospect because it's hard not to compare it to the Dark Knight trilogy. A lot of people are already doing it, but it's kind of a bummer because I feel like it's so different from the Dark Knight trilogy, even though everyone is like, yeah, the Dark Knight trilogy is also dark and it's also grounded. And I'm like, yeah, but this is dark in a different way and it's grounded in a different way. Like, it's very much grounded in the roots of the comic book stories of Batman, very similar to a lot of stuff I've read as far as the graphic novels goes. So I feel like that is what makes it so unique and different as far as Batman movies go. But let's talk about, as we said before, full spoilers. How did you feel about the plot as far as the crimes, the corruption behind Gotham, the political aspect of Gotham, the police department being corrupt, this entire crime organization kind of running through Gotham for the past 30, 40 years? RB3, how'd you feel about that plot being the main thread underneath all of the movie?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I mean, the plot definitely diverse from what we see like in a traditional superhero film. It's not really a superhero plot. It's really point by point a noir story, more particularly a neo-noir, right? Down to the, and we're going to be talking full spoilers here with everything, but opens with the grisly, like, most Batman movies open with us seeing the murder of the Bruce Wayne's parents, but this one actually starts with the murder of somebody else's parentage with the mayor dude getting murdered right after seeing his kid, and then but we see that grisly murder happen. That's like always the first step in noir, right? Going down to to the femme fatale, which we see in Zoe Kravitz's character and Catwoman, down to the, just all the elements of, the creepy antisocial villain, who ultimately, spoiler alert, ends up ultimately succeeding in the end. He ultimately gets like the way he wants. And yeah, it definitely fits into that neo-noir genre, especially when you talk about like when in neo-noir, the new trend that differentiates it from like the classic form that we saw in like the 1940s, is that neo-noir features a lot of corruption. It features this element of like the whole institution is rotted from the inside out, which we see in a lot of early movies, like Chinatown and, like Seven, and, a lot of other neo-noirs, Nightcrawler. And this is another example of that. So I think it does a really, really good job of painting a full neo-noir story out of what is with the Batman character at the center.
Yeah, how'd you feel about the Riddler being added to that, Sabrina? That whole corruption angle and how the Riddler kind of tries to exact his own version of justice throughout this entire corruption scandal that is infecting Gotham.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about like the antithesis of Batman and Joker, but I really did love this connection that we had with Batman and the Riddler with this one, because it's like, yo, we're kind of both vigilantes in our own separate way. And so we see that. And going off of what RB3 said earlier about that opening with this murder and him seeing this thing that he has been through before through the reflection of another kid, I thought just added so much more weight than if we did see his parents get murdered again, or we did have some type of flashback to that one. This just like held so much more weight, and you can really see the grief and the way he is. Like they always mention over and over, like he's a recluse, like he is not going out. People don't like recognize him after years or different things like that. And it's always just so interesting to see. So I think going off of this Batman that we have established with Robert Pattinson, this like emo, journaling, listening to Nirvana, like I thought all of this put together is so fun, because that the song that they used in that first trailer from Fandom 2 years ago, and the one that's in this film, Something in the Way by Nirvana, my favorite Nirvana song. I was a huge fan when I was a kid. So I love to see that in this film. And it made sense. I'm like, yo, superheroes, they're just like us. They're journaling, they're emo, they're sad. And this Riddler, who is in a similar position as him, like orphan, everything that they were going through, we see the two different sides of it. We see somebody who still is like affluent and has like a mark on the town and has a legacy to kind of fulfill. That's something that they kind of mentioned throughout all of this. And then somebody who literally has said that they have nothing. And so they have nothing to lose. And that's why the Riddler goes full force. So I really liked this take on that character.
As far as a character as well, it's interesting how Gotham was introduced in this movie. I kind of want to talk about Gotham RB3 as far as the city, as far as the way it deals with the conversation around crime. Like we've discussed RB3, for example, the way certain Batman movies in the past, specifically the Nolan trilogy, specifically The Dark Knight Rises, has talked about crime and certain laws and the police department compared to something like the Joker from a couple years ago, compared to now. How do you feel like this movie is commentating on certain aspects of crime and certain aspects of just social life in general?
Well, I mean, and this is where I might be sounding a little bit more like controversial, not in regards to this movie, but in regards to when we talked about in the Nolan movies, how I feel like Nolan took a much more like conservative approach to the police representation. Like, oh, police are always good. Like, everything they do is like the boys in blue, and like, we're always going to side with the rich billionaire and the police. Like, that's always going to be it. And then meanwhile, like when we go to the Batman v Superman world, and even the Joker, more particularly the Joker world, it's a lot more of like the flip. It's like the opposite. Like the police and all institutions are like bad, and where Joker is the one bright spot. Obviously, he's from the villain's perspective, but I think, like I said before, this takes more of a nuanced approach. Like there are some good cops that we see with Commissioner. Well, at this point, not Commissioner Gordon, soon to be Commissioner Gordon, and a few other good cops that are good on the team. But there are a lot of bad ones that have to be weaved out in the city too, and that makes Riddler's motivation a lot more justifiable. Like his villain plot actually makes probably a lot more sense than a lot of villain plots that we've seen in the Nolan trilogy and other trilogies, because he actually is motivated by something that's real, something that affects him, just not only just being an orphan, but taking out corrupt politicians, corrupt police officers, corrupt DAs who are threatening the city. And like you said, Andres, the way we see Gotham in this in this universe is very distinct. Like, you know, when we watch like the Nolan trilogies, it's very much the Gotham in that movie is very much like just Chicago. You know, when we watch like the Tim Burton movies, it's just like Tim Burton's like, you know, vision or whatever.
Gothic,
Yeah.
colorful. Like, yeah, it's definitely like more campy.
Yeah, and then but you know when we but when we see this one, it's a lot more. I feel like it's a lot more original. Like you could tell it's a little bit inspired by New York City a little bit. Same way Joker was inspired by New York a little bit, but like this one, there's a lot of differences. You know, like I like that you could go outside and it's like this hyper technological like world that you know we're familiar with today. But when you go inside of Batman's crib, it's like super gothic and like his interiors look like some like 16th century Victorian household. So it's just like very. I like the contrast that you can see like in the production design. It feels very apt to what the story is trying to tell.
Yeah, and even like just going off of that same thing, like Gotham is like a character in itself with all of this. This is really setting the scene and the tone, and that's why it's so distinct across the filmographies of what we've seen from Batman all throughout like decades. But with this one, it is just so like dirty, grimy, gross. Like I loved that. And then we do have that kind of like distinction with him like sitting pretty in his manner, like with all of that beautiful architecture. It's just super interesting.
Yeah, I love the way they did that as well. The production design is top notch. Obviously, we already talked about the cinematography, which is top notch as well, and the way they use lighting and the way that they flash all the high beams in your face throughout the movie. I thought that was funny as well. And the way it's always raining in Gotham was something that definitely stood out to me. Something I definitely want to talk about, and I kind of want to get to it now because we are talking spoilers, is the plot of the Riddler, is his plan mainly, is what I meant to say, and how he had a plan even though he was already locked up in Arkham. And his plan is brutally like reminiscent of the real world, I guess is what I could say. The way that those guys came up to that arena where all the people were kind of flocking to, and it would just kind of be this mass shooting. I can't lie. First time I saw that, I was like, damn, this is dark as hell. As I was watching the movie, I kind of said that to myself. How'd you guys feel about the way they did that plot point as far as the Riddler setting up the inspiration Riddlers, and then the way that Batman kind of connected to them after he beat up the one guy and he said he was vengeance? And Batman kind of realized like, yo, these guys are kind of like me too. How'd you feel about that final thread and that final plot point leading to the third act, Sabrina?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that this was this grounded approach and it was super dark and heavy because I feel like there was definitely genuine stakes there. And this kind of like these horror elements added to the film is what kept me really interested. And I thought it was super ambitious take. And also I just really appreciate the fact that we have a superhero movie that's not like, yo, the entire world is going to like explode if this doesn't go down. Like it is very contained as out there it is. Like it's a fully like Gotham type of problem. And we see that at the end when the way that everything pans out. So I really enjoyed that of it all. And Robert Pattinson, I know we haven't gotten to this point yet, but this was so cool. And this goes with what we were just talking about, because when we see the soon to be Commissioner Gordon, we have Batman really in his early years. This type of like third act or final act in the film, I think is just so interesting because we see him stumble and we see him make so many mistakes. Like when he jumps off and then he gets caught in like the underpass and he just like falls over. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it would be like with somebody who's in like year 2 of being Batman. You are going to make mistakes like that. So it's just cool to see him have these moments and not always be this like suave playboy that maybe he will grow to be a little bit more now that he's like, it seems like with Catwoman and the relationship that they had there, like coming out of his shell.
Yeah, RB3, what did you feel about the Riddler inspirations inside Gotham Square Garden, leading to that moment, to the finale?
It's fascinating. I didn't think too much of it. Well, I thought it was very similar to Joker in a lot of ways, right? Like how, you know, we saw a lot of Joker inspirations like at the end of that movie, because we see a villain that's like motivated by a cause, right? We see a villain that like has something, and we saw that starting to ink in the beginning when the first murder starts to happen to the mayor, and when they go to the funeral or whatever, it's not a bunch of, it's most of the protesters outside are pro Riddler, right? So it's, you know, a lot of people in the city of Gotham are already convinced that their politicians are screwed up. So yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, and with the followers are funny because they're like, oh, he has 500 followers on his little platform thingy, on his little dark web joint. I'm like, yo, like this dude's like a literal Twitter incel, like to the max. Like we got like 500 people getting ready to strap up, and that's the scary part too. If you got 500 followers, you can get about 10 of them to come out. Like if you motivate enough people like strong enough. So
I just know he's popping up on Reddit. Like I just know for a fact that he is like on Reddit probably 24/7.
I think he's beyond Reddit.
Definitely.
I think he's on some other sites as well.
He's like he's so chronically online. He's like a Twitch streamer, but evil.
Yeah, it was creepy. It was definitely creepy because it definitely felt realistic into what we've seen before, because that shit is real. Like there's been a lot of people that have met through that website and have received a lot of inspiration to do some actual real life mass shootings, which is actually concerning. Which is why I thought it was kind of what's up, man?
No, what are you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say which is why I thought it was kind of wild that Matt Reaves decided to put that in the movie. I was just like, damn, like that's raw, bro. That actually happens. There's been a couple people who have gotten inspired by like a couple websites that have gone on to make bombs and that have gone on to do a couple like school shootings. That's real.
That's what I think is like really interesting about it, is that kind of like commentary on how easy it is to spark all of this. Like RB3 was saying, with like 500 followers, you just get like a handful of people to actually go through with something like that. It's so easy to see information online, like whether it's like positive or negative, and then just kind of like run with it. And we see like videos of people even doing like low stuff, like the people that would go to grocery stores and not wear a mask and then like start screaming and ranting about like, this is my right, stuff like that, because somebody online was like, oh, you could show this pass that says you're like, you don't have to do this because of health related reasons or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the rabbit holes are definitely a real thing too. One thing I want to get to real quick is one of my favorite parts of the movie, and then we can go to your guys' favorite parts. One of my favorite parts of the movie is the way that Batman is presented in the film. The way he looks like a guy in a bat suit and armor, and the way that everyone keeps pointing out how weird that is one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like the way the cops are just like, damn, who the hell is this freaking dude dressed in like all military armor, ready to like go inside like a bomb squad type thing. Like I love the idea of Batman looking so bizarre inside this world. That's something that really, really stood out to me. And the fact that it is always Batman, almost 90% of this film is Batman, barely any Bruce Wayne, which I thought was really bold as well. But go ahead.
Oh, well, I think along with what you're saying, like those types of moments that we get with just like people's facial expressions, pauses in scenes, stuff like that, like there's a lot of humor in it. And it keeps it super engaging. And like, I love that something like this entry like isn't just like quip after quip after quip. It's more like he walks into the Riddler's apartment and we have that one character who's like, hey, what are you doing here with the gun? And then he's lowering it down and Batman doesn't even say anything. Yeah. He doesn't say anything at all that entire time. And you just see their interactions with each other, like him with citizens of the city, him with the cops. And I just think it adds like an extra layer of humor without being jarring and taking us out of the film and like messing up the tone.
I definitely want to get to your guys' favorite parts of the movie. RB3, what is your favorite part of this entire movie? Don't say Zoe Kravitz.
I wasn't gonna say Zoe Kravitz. I actually don't know what my individual favorite part is, but actually, I'll say probably the most standout part was the car chase that we got halfway through with the Penguin. Everything that led up to that whole sequence with the double cross with Catwoman to Falcone and the shootout and all that to lead up to that car chase. Which, by the way, like we see a lot of car chases in movies. There's not a lot that are done like that well done, and it's really fascinating that they did it that well done with it being like so dark and so like so dim and not like a lot of lighting on the highway or whatever. But it didn't look like super CGI. It looked like mostly practical. And then when they got to the bigger elements, it still looked pretty fresh. So yeah, I did jive with that. But I did want to ask you, Andres, you're talking about Riddler's followers. What did you think of his motivation though? Did you like Riddler's like actual motivation, or what did you think of that?
What, to like open up the secrets of Gotham? Is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like that was fair motivation for sure. I like the idea of Riddler thinking that he was righteous in his justice and righteous in his ways, and that Batman was his sidekick somehow. I love the conversation they have in Arkham Asylum where he says, you know, you're my homie, bro. It's like, it's good meeting you, homie. And he's like, no, you're crazy. And he's like, why are you calling me crazy? And he starts kind of like breaking down. I love the idea of like Riddler really thinking that he and Batman are 100% the same. I thought that was a really interesting twist. Why RB3? Why
who do you think is who do you think is more right, Joaquin Phoenix Joker or Riddler in this movie?
What is
who's more right?
Yo,
more right as far as doing a mass shooting of the entire city of Gotham?
I mean, who's more justified? Like who's more got the better motivation?
Like intentions, maybe like the initial intentions. I think like because Joker is so complicated with the stuff that he was going through and like his like mental illness and things like that, it's just kind of complicated. But I think the Riddler came from a place of like, yo, I have nothing to lose, so I'm just going to go full force and like find justice where I can. And so that's where I'm like, okay, like I definitely see all of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. RB3, I don't know what you're trying to get at. I don't know if RB3 is like, yo, domestic terrorism, let's do it.
No, I'm trying to see because no, because no,
I don't know if that's the right thing, bro.
You went extra hard. You went extra hard at Joaquin Phoenix. I'm seeing if you're gonna go extra hard at Paul Dano. I'm trying to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course I'll go extra hard. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very much against mass shootings. Yes, RB3.
We're not condoning the acts itself, but the idea
of
as
course,
a villain. I'm like, yeah, I totally understand. And like exposing, like, yeah, I'm not condoning murder as well, but the exposing part and everything else.
Oh yeah.
I'm 100% on board with.
Yeah, absolutely. RB3, you know,
and he didn't,
come on, bro. Come on now. I'm way more socially conscious than you are, bro. Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
And by the way, he didn't order anybody mass shoot anybody. He just exploded a couple water tanks, and then everybody else decides to do the mass shooting themselves. There's mass shooting in Dark Knight Rises too. Mass shooting in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, for me, the Joker was never about like motivations or anything like that. I thought that was all really fair. I just don't think that was actually well handled, combined with the medical syndrome that they were doing with mental health. I just don't feel like the movie really meshed that well. The Joker. I'm talking about the Joker. As far as what it was this one trying to communicate, I feel like this one did it way better. As far as they're trying to communicate, yes, there is corruption. Yes, there is certain things that are done in cities like this that leads all the way to the top with institutions. And the way we go about handling it is important. That's why I like Batman's final speech at the very end of this movie. I thought it was like, oh shit, that's raw. He's spitting right now because he's saying, yo, I was so concerned with vengeance, justice. Like, to me, it was just blending and being the same. And I inspired Gotham maybe to go a little too far and maybe to take things a little too sideways, to do things where you're justifying awful, violent, corrupt things simply because of your situation or because there is too much corruption going on in the city, which is what the Riddler is telling him, as far as them being the same person.
And also like see with like Catwoman as well, with Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, like she is along kind of those similar lines of the stuff that she went through. And she's like, yeah, this is how I am going to handle this. Like, this is justice for me. And then we have Batman going like, no, like once you do that, you're just as bad as them. And so that we kind of get that, even though we don't have that back and forth with him and Riddler, because at that point, Riddler's just way too far gone because he was just brutally murdering people instead of just exposing or anything like that. So I like that with Catwoman, she had a chance to just like take a step back and kind of like reflect on all that, even though like it's justified. It's justified with her father. It's justified because that was like her roommate, her friend, possibly girlfriend. Like she was calling her babe, but I know she referred to her as friend. So something along those lines, like someone she had a relationship with, and that hurts. And like what she had gone through with her childhood as well. So we have these three characters all together that their stories like reflect each other's a lot, so they can have an understanding that maybe some people aren't able to. And it's cool to see the three different like spectrums of it. We have like Batman, not too far off the edge, but like still like getting his footing. We have Catwoman right in that middle part, and then Riddler too far gone.
Yeah, I really love the Catwoman aspect to it, Sabrina. I love that you brought it up, because Batman is at the very beginning of the Catwoman relationship is kind of just like, no, you're a criminal, get out of my face. And I'm just like, what? And Catwoman's like, you don't even know what that means. Like, you sound like a really rich guy right now, is what she literally tells him.
Yeah.
Because he just kind of just was like, criminal, you know, Falcone, get out of my face. And it's like Batman at the end of the movie has to learn, like, it's not that simple. It's not simple as like, oh, you're a criminal, blah, 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 get out of my face, I'm going to beat you up. It's more of like, what is my situation? What was I raised in? Like, I was literally raised in this environment, and how do I try and get out of it is what Catwoman has to learn, and what Batman has to learn as well.
And she grew up in that like underbelly of everything. It goes back to everything RB3 was saying about like noirs and neo-noirs and all that corruption and like the seedy like underlings of everything. And so like she was raised in that. So she always had this thing of just like survive. Same thing with like Bruce, except extremely privileged. And then same thing with the Riddler. It was just like they're just figuring out how to survive and like their place in this city and in the world.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts? Sabrina, I definitely want to go to you as far as any moments that you want to shout out as well.
Oh, honestly, there is so much, but anytime Catwoman was on screen, I thought Zoe Kravitz absolutely killed it. Every single thing, from the way she was walking around, it was so like feline-esque, like she jumped into this 100%. And same thing with the like physicality of Robert Pattinson as Batman, because when he was like Bruce Wayne, he's like hunched over, he's definitely more like timid, but then when he's Batman, he's just like fully embodying what he is supposed to be representing. So that's the thing where it seems like two completely different people the second he takes off that suit. So I found that to be super fascinating, especially since he's so early as that. So those are two things. But one thing I will say that is a little negative, I still really overall enjoyed this film, but wow, everyone was talking low and slow. Like every single scene was like whispers, talking low, they're like, yeah, I mean, we gotta do this.
Who's the mustache with the broken nose?
I was just like, all right, like I totally get that, but we had a scene with like Alfred and Bruce Wayne just talking together. They're in like the Batcave. Nobody's listening to them. They don't need to whisper. They don't need to hide anything. So I don't know why they were speaking like that. And I just feel like if we like picked up the pace a little bit, I wouldn't feel the runtime as much, and it wouldn't feel as like dragged out. Excuse me. But there was also like lingering shots as well. So I think the combination of all of that, there's just so many moments that I thought, okay, you could shave like 2 seconds here, 3 seconds here, add all that up, takes a solid 10, 15 minutes off the film. And then I think it'd be a little bit more palatable. This was super drawn out, but I still liked it because I enjoyed all the other aspects of it. I enjoyed the cinematography, the direction, editing, performances all across the board, loved. So that's what kept me engaged. And again, this being so different from what we typically get with like comic book movies, especially with DC ones. I loved it. I loved all of that. So if we just got that like paced a little bit better, like sped up a few things just a little bit more, it would be like a 5-star movie in my opinion.
Yeah. What about you, RB3?
Well, in regards to pacing, I normally like I would I think I'm normally good with like a 3-hour movie, and a lot of times a 3-hour movie could go really well. Scorsese does a really good 3-hour movie. Endgame was 3 hours, went really well too. High energy. This one, I feel like it earned this 3 hours. It did a really good job, especially when you realize it's trying to imitate like Seven and all of those other neo-noir classics that are 3 hours and kind of like lengthy, almost like dramas. And this kind of felt like almost more of like a Batman novel than it did like an actual actual movie. That being said, though, I do agree, Sabrina. I think it could have been a little bit shorter. I think there's like 2 scenes in particular that were like back to back that I think could like actually to me felt like deleted scenes. Like as I was watching them, it was the scenes when Falcone when Bruce Wayne went to confront Falcone about the murder of his parents, and then the very next scene it got canceled out by Alfred telling him, "Oh, it wasn't Falcone, or it wasn't Falcone, it was somebody else." Like it's like yeah, that, or I forgot exactly how the order that went, but it's like
yeah, it was like the one guy that Falcone like said it was. I felt that exact same way in that moment. Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, these literally could have been like cut scenes, and I probably wouldn't have like added too much, confusion to the thing. But that being said, though, I did enjoy it taking a little bit more of his time. I do gotta say, I do remember one moment that is definitively my favorite. Is when after Catwoman had the little eye thingy in her eye, and Bruce Wayne was like watching the playback on his computer, and then he's just watching the part where he's like talking to Falcone, he's like touching his cheek, and he's like re-looping that like 10 times over, and then like he's like, is she in a relationship? Is she in a relationship? And that's like literally like all exes when they're like trying to like look through their, it's like their O's like security like Instagram stories, like what I hear, like is that somebody's their hand? Like, yeah. So.
And she was on screen during that moment when she had like her hands like on the bathroom sink, and she like said like I whatever. And then Alfred comes in and he's like, "Oh, she's pretty. Like, is that a new friend?" Because he sees that he's literally watching this tape on repeat.
Right.
I like how the movie didn't shy away from Batman being just a little creepy. As soon as Batman was peeping in the window, I was just like, "Yo, Batman, what you doing? What you doing, Batman?" I thought that was definitely a little funny as well. I love the scene, RB3. I don't know if you're with me here, when he's running away in the police department in his police station.
Oh yeah,
and he's just like, and like all like 500 cops are chasing him. I was like, yo, this is the realest.
Yeah. This did feel
it's the rawest scene in Batman right here, running away from the cops.
It definitely 100% felt like a super raw, like almost like indie movie type, like in that scene. And then there's a couple other scenes, like in the opening fight when he's like getting all those guys like out of the subway thing or whatever. That felt like something a little more of like out of an indie movie instead of a big budget superhero movie. It did ultimately get to the big CGI stuff at the end with the flood and all that stuff, which I was like, that's interesting. But even that didn't look like too bad or too trash. They shot it in kind of a way, like I noticed, they shot it in more of like a far away type of way with a lot of overhead shots that made it so where you don't really see a lot of the water and the flooding like up close when it's happening. I thought it was a really good creative way of blending the CGI and the live action the way that it looked really good. So
I gotta ask, RB3, you and I did a trailer reaction to the recent one at Fandom. You said you didn't know what to expect yet from Robert Pattinson as Batman. I need to hear the updated opinion.
He's fire as Batman. I mean, I think he's a great Batman. I think he has a really good, like I was criticizing his voice in particular. I thought he was going to do that growly thing that he did in the trailer through the whole movie. He only did that in the one scene, and he's mostly talking in his normal voice to it. So I didn't mind it. I think it was better than doing the neg, even though I grew up with the neg growl. Neg growl is nostalgic with the Christian Bale, but
I hate it.
yeah. You hate Christian Bale. You hate the new one.
The voice, but also I don't like vibe 100% with Christian Bale and Michael Keaton. I always felt like their villains were just so much more interesting than them. And like I do think Batman is an interesting character, and like so this change with it had me 100% on board, because as interesting as Catwoman was, as the Riddler was, and everybody else, Bruce Wayne himself, like I wanted to know more. They didn't give us every single thing yet. So I'm left excited to see the next chapter of whatever we're going to get from Robert Pattinson's Batman. So yeah, so I didn't like the like for Christian Bale. Like I just can't.
Yeah. I do gotta say, I think I liked the way they used the Batman character. I don't think, and I like Robert Pattinson's performance. I just don't think there wasn't a lot of like emotional depth to the character himself. Like I think there's kind of almost played to like a one note kind of thing a little bit. Not necessarily to his detriment, but I think that's something we see in a lot of neo-noirs, right? Like they're most like this cold-faced stoic thing who doesn't really see a lot of like outward emotions like through our protagonist. I think that was definitely the case in this one. I think this is a little bit of a drier Batman intentionally, But I don't think, I think we get a lot of his character growth through his narrations and through his writings, but I still feel like at the end of it, he's still pretty much him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I
No, go
respect
ahead.
that. And like, I agree at that same time. But I do think like, since we are getting that like footing, I think the interactions that we had with Alfred, although very few, honestly, very few and far between, like at the beginning when he's just like, yeah, you're not my dad. You're not even like part of the family, kind of, like emo teenage boy type of situation. And then we have that moment of just kind of like what Alfred really means to Bruce when we think that we might have lost him for a second. And then when he realizes that he didn't, and it's just like, yeah, like your family, you're all I have, I'm all you have. And like, I don't know, I really thought that was a beautiful thing. And even though he's not super expression-y, like he's not super expressive, he doesn't have a lot going on, I do think there's like something we notice in his eyes and like his face, the way he moves his mouth and like different things like that, that's very subtle, but super effective.
Yeah, I feel like the one scene that kind of describes that in full, Sabrina, is the Arkham Asylum Riddler scene, where Riddler is saying Bruce Wayne like a million times. He's like Bruce Wayne, and he's just like the whole time he's just acting his ass off just through the mask. I thought that was extremely effective as well. But I also like the idea of Batman being that kind of fish out of water in this situation, as far as being kind of a weird dude. Like he's just kind of a weird dude. And I love how Robert Pattinson described it. I believe he did it for the GQ interview or like the Variety interview. I forget what it was, but he said like, someone told me, why are you playing Batman? I thought you only played weirdos. And he's like, he's kind of a weirdo. And he was like, yeah, you're right. I do kind of play weirdos. And that's kind of what I wanted to play Batman because I knew he was a weirdo like me. Because he likes playing those roles. And I feel like that's kind of perfect because Batman is kind of strange in his ways as far as what he's doing, but he feels like he's doing it for the right reasons. And the way they go about describing that throughout the film, as far as him being in the suit throughout the whole time, and just taking all the bullets and just punching people everywhere, really did feel like that's kind of what Batman is. And like, if you've read any comic, Batman isn't the most expressive guy. He's a very stoic kind of neo-noir kind of guy. So that's why I felt like it worked.
I mean, so. I totally get that. I mean, I get what you're saying.
He's not a quippy dude.
I'm not saying there's
Imagine
clips.
he goes like Tony Stark Playboy style with like these quips, like he's like da da da.
No. I would hate that. I'm just saying that like when you watch Batman Begins, there's a beginning. He's in a place in the beginning and he's at a place at the end. It's even if you watch Batman v Superman, not the greatest movie.
You don't feel like
he's at a place.
He did that in this one.
I think his narration did that for him. Like, and I think the camera work and I think the idea of the movie did that for him. I don't think I really felt that through Robert Pattinson's performance, through the Batman character himself. I think like the voiceover, like you said, Andres, like him at the end with the words that he's saying, like 100% there, like, and the actions that he's doing with carrying the torch, like at the end, the action is there. I just don't know if the performance of the eyes, like the change in the eyes, is there for Robert Pattinson, for me at least. For me,
I'm gonna say the Alfred scene, just to like close that out. The Alfred scene, the scene, his last, actually every scene with him and Selena, because you could see that he doesn't get close or comfortable to people ever, and he was kind of doing that with her. And so every single time is just a little bit more, all the way up until the end. And it's kind of one of those things of like, is he going to go with her? What is he going to say? We know he's not. We know he's not going to leave. He is going to stay there for his family's legacy. But seeing just kind of like his range of emotion and thoughts through that, although very subtle, I did think worked. And then same thing with that conversation that Andres mentioned with the Riddler, and also the whole like vengeance thing. And even just like him talking about like orphans and going through that moment when we had that riddle about the orphans, which immediately I'm like, yo, next victim is Bruce, homie, it's you. But they were like really going, and they're like going to like that orphanage and everything. So I do understand this is definitely so much more understated and subtle than I think people were probably expecting from a Batman movie, but it worked for me.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's the biggest takeaway I took from the movie, was how different it was, as far as, like you said, Sabrina, subtle, long, kind of quiet at times. Like I remember like there was scenes back to back where it was just exposition. And I was just like, damn, I think this is the most back-to-back scenes in a Batman movie that I've seen that is literally just talking. I don't think I've seen that before, because as much as the Nolan movies were grounded, I felt like they had a lot of action set pieces, like a lot of them. But this one felt like, I think there was like 3 action scenes and that's kind of it. And that's why I felt like, man, this really is a different take on the Batman, which to me was really refreshing to me, because I feel like something different is something good. So
speaking of something different, Barry Keoghan, I know we only got like the tiniest little thing, but I need to hear y'all's thoughts on it.
I have the hottest. The entire movie, I was like, this movie is working. This movie, as soon as we got to that, I was like, no. The only thing in the whole movie where I was like, this is not working at all. At all. I don't know if you guys have a different take, but I was like, this does not. If it reminded me of Carnage and Venom. Like it didn't work at all.
I don't know about that, but I think for me, I have a little bit of a different. I have a weirder take. We have 2 Oscar winners at this point. We got Jared Leto. We got Joaquin Phoenix. Pick an Oscar winner. Pick an Oscar winner to play Joker. I know you don't want it to be in the same universe. I know you don't want that. If it's just gonna be one scene and you're not gonna show his face, just do Jared Leto's voice or something, just to like. I don't need to see a third character. Back.
You know they're gonna bring him back. And also I like Barry Keoghan quite a bit. Obviously, we did not get anything. Apparently, there was some like other scene that got cut from the film. Yeah. But yeah, like a Daniel Kaluuya, like somebody like that who is so crazy. I just want to see him as just like a hardcore villain, because Widows, he just like spooked me with his face and his voice and everything. Somebody like that, someone like a Lakeith Stanfield, like I think that because they're kind of in that like same like age range of all these villains, like they're all pretty young, so having like a super talented young person, which Barry Keoghan is, so like not saying anything against him, but yeah, I wanted to see someone like that could do like crazy because Barry Keoghan is another one that's like an understated crazy, especially with something like Killing of a Sacred Deer or films like that. So it makes me curious on what we're going to see, because I can't judge it based off of like this minute footage, but your Carnage comparison, I'm done with you.
All right, fine. It's not Carnage. I'm sorry. I can't put anyone on that low of a platform, because my God, I hated that.
I mean, he had like the crazy hair as well. I know you can like barely
it just reminded me of that scene, and it reminded me of it just not working. Like the performance not working, the lines not working, even just a little bit of the makeup that I saw. I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, we're talking about this actor, man. Even Druidge and the Eternals is like mad creepy too. So like
he is.
I don't doubt the creepiness. I do think the makeup wasn't all there, but I do think, like you said, Sabrina, there was a full other scene that they cut. So maybe with that other scene, there might have been a lot more to that character.
Hopefully we can see it. Maybe it'll be like released as like a deleted scene or something.
Oh, can I mention something too that I think I forgot to mention? Because all the references we had to everything else inside the Batman universe, obviously I can't do the new Rockstars thing as far as naming everything, but what I can do is I can say shout out to Bloodhaven. It got a reference as far as where Selena Kyle may go next. That is Nightwing's city. That's a potential Nightwing tease as far as like a Robin. I don't know how that's going to work, RB3. I know you love the idea of bringing the kid on as far as adventures. And number 2 is Venom. The injection that he gave himself, was that Venom, which is what Bane uses? I
thought it was adrenaline.
Because it was green, and I was like, Venom is what Bane uses to get huge, and he looked like that's what it was. And I was like, ooh, is this a Bane tease? Could we see a different version of a Bane in the potential future? Because that stuff that he used is what Bane uses to get all jacked up. So there we go. Just ideas.
I just thought it was adrenaline at that moment.
Can I shout out
green? So that's the only reason why.
I didn't wear my glasses. That's on me. I didn't bring my glasses to the movie. I totally forgot. So there's a few like colors and things like that I didn't get to see as much.
Yeah, because it's very specifically green in like almost every version. So go ahead, everything.
Yeah, no. Which is probably hard to see, Sabrina, because it's probably hard to like actually physically see.
Yeah.
But I do just want to shout out real quick, like the other movie references in this movie.
There's a lot.
Obviously, I mean, there's a lot, but Seven's the most obvious one. The fact that it rained the whole time. I hate the fact that Warner Brothers, the very first trailer they released was Riddler getting revealed or Riddler getting caught. Like, fam, you did not need to release that at all. We did not need to see Paul Dano's face. Y'all could have did the same thing y'all did with Seven and hit him. That would have been so much more interesting. But I digress. Also, a lot of classic noir. I think particularly Nightcrawler, with the car driving scenes and just the muscle handling in general. Man, I had a whole list here and I literally just lost it. Obviously Zodiac, with the Riddler's design, the way he like taped himself up and taped other people's, and with the cryptic code and stuff like that. So a lot of Fincher references, a lot of Silence of the Lamb was another one that we saw in like the production design. So you know, big fan of how neo-noir-ish it was.
It was very neo-noir. As soon as I finished the movie, I was like, damn, this is the most Seven movie I've seen since Seven.
And when have we ever seen Batman like genuinely this intelligent and this good of a detective? Like, he was outsmarting every single person that he possibly could at any moment. And I don't think we've seen enough of that ever.
Yeah, I love seeing Batman be any kind of smart. I love the idea of him solving those riddles very quickly, even though he couldn't do the Spanish one.
I don't know. I don't know if he was that smart. I feel like he messed up like 90% of the movie though. Like,
but that's,
he did,
I also
which is
appreciated that. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, I think you were going to say what I was going to say.
The stumbles and like messing up every so often, but there were times, especially like in the beginning, if it looked like he was like really confident, and then like he was getting tripped up, so it seemed like he was getting in his head almost as we kind of went on. But yeah, in the beginning, like he shows up and he's like, oh yeah, this thing on the wound, that means this happened before death or after death, whatever he said. So little details like that he was noticing that other people weren't picking up on at the time, people who do this professionally, and he's just like stepping in totally fish out of water to this crime scene. So it's just stuff that I appreciated.
That makes a lot of sense. That's totally a fair point as well. I love it. I just love the idea of him definitely being able to be smart in those situations. Any final thoughts, RB3?
Not for me.
Okay.
I'm a big fan.
Okay.
Shout out Matt Reaves.
Shout out Matt Reaves for doing.
He did it. He did it. He bodied it. Not gonna lie.
He really did, man. Like, he really did. It's just such a bold. I saw this movie. I know. I'm sure we have our own screenings as far as how we saw it. My screening had a ton of kids. A ton of kids.
I don't like that.
And
I don't like that.
And the entire time,
Wow.
like, I really got a good read as far as like how kids are going to react to this movie. A lot of people got mad at me on Twitter because I tweeted something that said like, yo, Matt Reaves did not pay attention to kids, because the kids in my theater were not vibing like at all.
No.
They were either scared, bored, or just confused. Like, they were just like, this is not my Batman.
Well, when do we ever see children watching like neo-noirs or like Seven? Like, that would be
No,
so
but to
weird.
them, it's
So,
just
yeah,
Batman.
this is not. Yeah, this is totally not the vibe for that. This is not a like Justice League.
Bold. That's bold of
Yeah.
Matt Reeves to do. Respect to Matt Reeves for scaring kids, man. I love it. I love to see it.
The beginning was definitely a horror movie when the Riddler was creeping up on Odu from behind him. That was some sick stuff. That literally felt like a Saw movie. And also, the other movie reference, I mentioned Chinatown before, but also, oh my gosh, did I literally just lose it? The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola, from the opening shot when we see him tracking from the eyeglass and stuff like that. A lot of really great movie references that I think it took more from movies than it did from comic books, which I think is like even cooler for me. So
it definitely took a lot from movies. Definitely a few comic books though. There's a couple comic references in there that I loved.
I'm also surprised, honestly, that like Warner Brothers let it be the length that it was. I really wonder if like Matt Reeves had like final edit or what his kind of like contract with this was, because like, again, really long, and you know that like they love to like cut stuff down like this, and so much was kept in, and that's why I really love, like, it just really felt like his own fully fleshed out like take on it. So that's why even like the long drawn out stuff, like I respect it 100%. And I saw this at the Chinese theater. Justice Smith from Jurassic Jurassic
I know
World.
that guy.
Yeah.
At my showing. I was just like, oh shit. Yeah.
This is up.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
Also, I was gonna say a 3-hour movie made $128 million. So obviously
Opening weekend,
big,
yeah.
opening weekend. So big risk, big reward. And I think it just goes to show you if they make a bigger quality movie, it reaps more rewards. I also think they let it be 3 hours because they had a lot to set up for like 3 different TV shows that they're producing: a Penguin show, a Gotham show, an Arkham show. Like, they had a lot going on from this movie. So
it's also, I think the Snyder situation like just put the fear of God in them. They realized that
I don't know about all that.
Okay, the Justice League.
Matt Reaves is so talented, but nobody, like, we wouldn't know. You know, it wouldn't be because there's not like controversy and stuff, so we wouldn't know like what version or what's trimmed down or whatever. But I think it's different.
But I do feel like I will never forget like when one of the major issues of Justice League was like the head of Warner Brothers said it had to be under 2 hours, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, ever since then, I think they were just like, oops, that's stupid. Let's never do that again.
Oh, that's so dumb. It's like, it's not the length that is the issue ever. It's always just like how they use that time. So if it's like, yo, you want to make a movie that's 2 hours and 30 minutes, like, cool. Yeah. They filled this up, even with that one gripe I have of just like a little bit of like lingering stuff, everybody talking so slowly. It's just a very small piece in how much I love this movie.
Absolutely. Either way, guys, those were our thoughts on the Batman film. We got through quite a bit. I like this conversation. It was weird, but it was just like Batman weird and the Riddler and all of Gotham emo. But we got through it either way, guys. I want to know where everyone can find you. Let's start with you, Sabrina.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sabrina X Monica, also on Twitter at Sabrina on Film.
Harbor 3. Nope, you're on mute.
Muted.
Out my bad. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3, or you can see me on HBO Max watching Kimmy because I'm obsessed with that movie. So.
Oh, the movie Kimmy.
Hell yeah.
Shout out to Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah, I watched it a couple times this weekend.
Oh, a couple times. Damn, bro.
Good film.
Ooh.
And did you also see Batman twice?
No, I only saw it once this weekend, but I'm ready to see it.
I was gonna say you're on a Zoe Kravitz renaissance over there.
Yeah, nah. I've always been a big fan of Zoe since Dope.
Yeah.
Damn, yeah. What's the movie she's in with where she plays? It's the young adult movies that I used to like.
It's Kind of a Funny Story.
No,
isn't that one?
Shailene Woodley.
That's a good one,
right?
It's Kind of a Funny Story. That's a good cut.
Yeah, I love it.
Damn, I forgot what it was called.
Divergent.
Oh,
Yeah.
Shout out to Zoe Kravitz
Hunger
from
Games and X-Men.
Yeah. Oh, and Mad Max Fury Road.
Wait, is she in Hunger Games or am I wrong?
Is she?
No, she's not.
Never mind. I actually haven't even seen all the movies. So Divergent and X-Men.
And Mad Max too. Mad Max.
Oh, Mad Max. Yeah. She plays, I think her name is Toast in Mad Max.
She's the best part.
Yeah, there you go. Alrighty, guys. You can find me at Squad Leader Race. You can find us at First Cut TMO. Make sure you subscribe to First Cut if you haven't done so already. We're going to keep talking about movies throughout the week, so make sure you guys tune in. But other way, guys, for the spoiler review of the Batman, we're going to be peacing out. So peace.